everyone, and welcome to this, one of the first videos on this channel, the Self-Taught Software Engineer, where I'm gonna teach you, or rather instruct you a bit, on how you can start developing software on your own computer at home for free on top of things. The purpose of this video is, well, it stands by itself in essence. You can just use it, and I show you how you can get started, because I know that for some people, for many people, that wanna start looking into programming, software development, etc. The aspect of where do I even begin is a big challenge, and I fully understand that, because if I think back when I started, this is indeed there's a lot of options. So I want to guide you a bit with an option that I personally believe is a very good starting point for you, and from there you can take it anywhere, I believe. One quick note, if you want to know more about the channel or my person, there is another video that you should be seen linked in the top right corner right now, where I'm introducing the channel and myself and what the plan of this all is. So I can just suggest you to watch that. Otherwise, I also have a video on actual instructions, a proper course on how you can get started developing software programming with. I'm starting from the scratch, and I'm teaching you how you can write your first few small programs that do something interesting or funny, whatever you want to have them do. That's the nice thing about it ultimately. And this video really is like the extra step you need to do this at home. Of course, you can watch the videos and just see how the stuff works, but it's nice, of course, to try it out yourself, and ultimately that's probably the goal of most viewers. So that's what this video is precisely for. All right, let's walk through what I'm going to show you, and then you can follow along with me. So we're gonna install first IntelliJ as our program where we do the programming, and then Kotlin, which is the programming language that I can thoroughly recommend to get started, but also to do development in general. And but let's start from the beginning with the program first, and then the tools, how to get there. So what is IntelliJ IDEA? You maybe stumbled upon it already. If not, it is an integrated development environment, or short IDE. That's probably the term you read most often, and that I'm also going to use, not the full one, by the company JetBrains. What does that mean, integrated development environment? The term is very convoluted. What it ultimately just means is it is an editor, text editor on steroids, if you will, and that is specifically suited for software development. It has, on top of being an editor that you can type text into just as you could with MS Word or something, it has specific features that cater to a software developer that you would not find in any other editor you would use to write an essay or whatever. So that's ultimately what the term really refers to. And there's other options, of course. There's also editors that are a bit more lean, but I firmly believe that this is the one you want to be using, because it just helps you also learn how to it gives you some nice tips along the way. That's essentially my point. And it's very, I'm not sure if ergonomics is the right term, but it's like, I find it very intuitive, you know. It's like after you use it a bit, it just feels right to use it. And whenever I have to use some other environment, I'm always a bit slower. Of course, that is getting used to it ultimately. If I would use something else, probably would be fine as well. But this is just what I recommend, and what I've been using also professionally for a long time. It has a free open source edition, as well as a paid one that has more features. For our purposes of getting started to program, the free one is absolutely fine. As a matter of fact, even for doing larger scale applications, apps or whatever, the free one is easily fine. There's some niceties about the paid one, which we're quickly going to look into, but you don't need it by any means. And it's free, so there's no strings attached. It's also not going to start costing something at some point. What I already liked about it, it's a clean, like, to the point editor that has some niceties on top of it that you do not find in other editors out of the box. What you usually have in other editors and IDEs oftentimes is that they do offer very similar features to what IntelliJ does, but you have to install like 100 plugins on top of it, and then they might not work with a certain version anymore and stuff like that. With IntelliJ, you get a whole package, and that is ultimately really what I like about it. Yeah, you don't have to look any further to do some more specific tasks. Of course, there is something that you might want to use other tools for, obviously, but I have to tell you, I'm getting there 99% of the time just fine with what is on board, and maybe some additional plugins if you really need them. Yes, a quick word, because that is something I found quite confusing when I started using JetBrains' tools, is that they offer quite a lot of different products in general that are not IDEs, but they also offer a lot of different IDEs. And in essence, what they do is they have different flavors of their IntelliJ IDEA platform, which is just the thing we're going to install today and that we're going to use. Different flavors and with certain other features that cater for specific different programming language or environment. In theory, if you install like the right plugin for the language you want to use, you can use your IntelliJ free version, or it's called Community Edition, it's the proper term, with other languages just fine. But just so you know, and we're going to see in a second, there's stuff for developing pretty much, a lot of other well-known languages based on the same common platform. So don't get confused by the many options. We're just going to stick to the regular IntelliJ for now, and that's also all you need if you want to follow the courses on this channel. Yes, one tip that I have for installing this now, and I'm directly gonna mention this is not required. I'm also gonna show you another way, is what I can recommend is the JetBrains toolbox. This is like a small helper application to install all of their products. The nice upsides that I listed here and why I use it since many years by now is that you have a single place to install and also uninstall the software that they offer. Specifically, also the uninstalling option is nice in my opinion. If you just want to get rid of it. It has an automated update mechanism, which is really nice. I mean, software oftentimes that is something that's really not well done yet, weirdly. So if there's a newer version, which there is very often, then you can just click a button, it updates itself, and all's good. It also has an integrated like browser for your programming projects, which is nice, not necessarily required, but it's a nicety. And finally, you can have some integration with GitHub and GitLab and Bitbucket, so popular version control systems in your web browser, such that you can click just on a project, such as the course files I'll give you, and it automatically opens it in your local IntelliJ environment. So you can get, code it, run it, whatever you want, which is also just a nicety, not really required, and it's anyways optional, but it's quite cool. If you never used GitHub or the others, I'm also planning on doing a video very soon on showing like the very basics in using that together with IntelliJ, very likely, because that's what you're mostly going to do. The only downside I can really think of that you have an extra application, and that by default, I want to mention that by default, as very many things, and you're probably aware of that anyways, very many tools, by default, it's enabled that it starts when your computer starts, but you can, of course, just disable that. So that is the only thing I would consider a downside, that you have this extra thing, and if you forget it, it always starts itself. And you don't need it to run the tools themselves. It's really just like an installation, update, and starting thing. But you can also just run it, double-clicking the icon. IntelliJ, that is. Yes, the other option, of course, that you have is to just install IntelliJ IDEA with nothing else. It's just a plain application on your computer then. So we're quickly gonna look at both ways, or rather, we're now gonna look at the toolbox way, because the other one is very straightforward. So what you do is you go to either of the links, whichever option you prefer. It's really up to you. It's the same exact product at the end of the day. And if you do that, you're gonna end up at these one of these pages here that I linked. It's just the download. I'm not going to walk you through, because I mean, I'm sure you downloaded and installed programs beforehand. So yeah, you click the download here. It actually automatically detects what platform you're on. In my case here, it's Mac OS. But you also it also runs on Windows. Actually, also the new custom Apple chipsets as well as Linux platforms. But yeah, as a matter of fact, if you click this blue download button here, it actually detects automatically what operating system you're on and selects the correct thing. So either this or the other option is going here and downloading it here. Same here, detects that. So I would suggest you do that. In the meantime, you can actually keep watching this video because it will, of course, take a bit to download. It's not a huge download, but it's a couple hundred megabytes. And I'm actually going to do the same now. So imagine either you did this and you really just, it's as every installer, so you click next, and read the terms and conditions, of course. And then it's installed. For the toolbox, I'm quickly going to show you, if you would have downloaded it and installed the toolbox app itself, you will find this icon here on your taskbar, or in Windows it would be here in the bottom right in the tray. On Linux, depends highly on your desktop environment, but you probably know where it is. And this is what it looks like. So you see I already have a few things installed here, but I'm also just gonna now install IntelliJ Community Edition. So this is the one that's free and that we want to use, and that's also very suitable for us. So I'm clicking installing here, and now it's downloading. In the meantime, let's continue. So I'll just assume you download and install this with the toolbox literally clicking on the thing. IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition we want. Not the Ultimate Edition, which is the paid one. You can use it 30 days for free, but yeah, I don't think that's much use in it. If you just want to get started programming, I would just outright install the free one instead of having to uninstall it and get the free one after the 30-day trial of the paid one. So IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition, either via the toolbox or straight application download. While this is installing in the background on my as well as your computer, let's quickly look at the language that we're gonna use, or that I would recommend you to use at least. So programming language in general, there's very many options. There's hundreds, easily maybe thousands of different languages that people designed over the years. Ultimately, the idea is that you have some that are for more specific purposes. So you have very many, for example, that are for scientific computing, that are specifically accurate, for example, in arithmetic calculations, or can do certain specific math operations more efficiently or faster, maybe even, than some what is called a general purpose programming language, which, as the name implies, is for there's no specific use case. It works for everything. Of course, you have some things where it works not as well as something specialized as you might have imagined, but it works for pretty much every use case. Here, the common languages that you'll find, and yeah, this list is by no means complete. There's a lot more common ones, but these are just the ones you will likely have contact with if you start researching a bit, is C++, as well as C, which C++ is heavily based on, Python, Java, Kotlin, Swift, and JavaScript. A bit of context quickly, otherwise this is very useless to you probably. C++ and C are usually used for for applications that are in general large scale, because you can make the code is, how do you say, you can make it it lends itself well to having like a large code base, a lot of code. And in general, you would use it for stuff that needs speed, because they're known as being very fast. So common examples are game development or embedded systems, such that something like robotics and an airbag, maybe something like that. That's what you would typically do with this. Python is nowadays very popular in the data science and artificial intelligence community, but is also very general purpose. You can pretty much do everything with it. It's known for being very expressive, so it has like a lot of just English language operators and stuff, such that it's known for being very easy to learn. However, in my personal opinion, the downside is a bit that it's a bit of a stitched together language. So over time, more and more features were added, and they all feel a bit half baked to me personally. It is a very good, powerful language, and I also think it's a good language to just generally do something. But I think it falls a bit short if you want to look more into. And it's a very broad claim. I know you can do very proper programs with Python, but if you want to look into like large scale applications, in my personal opinion and also experience with using it for many years, it falls short a bit. Then we have Java, which is heavily based on C. Essentially, it took what C does and added a few, like, to make it a bit more like ergonomic, a bit easier to use, and a bit more fail-safe as well, because in C you can make very many mistakes that the language just doesn't guard against. You know, you can do anything, but that also means that you can make a lot of mistakes. In Java, there's a few things that try to handle that for you, that you can just not run into it as easily, at least. It was and still is a very popular just for general purpose large scale application development. It's one of the go-to things you would use. In the late 2000s, it got a bit old-fashioned, so to say, compared to other languages that showed up at the time. Recently, they put a lot more effort, them being the original developers of the language itself, they put a lot more effort again into keeping it up to date, adding more features and stuff like that. So it is a very good language. I use it on a daily basis, as a matter of fact. And I personally think it's a very nice language just to code anything, because it's very geared, just as what C++ tries to be, very geared towards making like robust, good programs, which you can do with Python, for example, as well, but it's a lot harder. You have to invest more from your own side. You can, of course, make horrible programs in Java, but there's more tools for yourself to make a nice, good program, in my opinion. Then we have what we would use today, Kotlin. It is super heavily based on Java, so if you know Kotlin, you can very likely learn Java very quickly, and vice versa. If you know Java, getting to Kotlin is quick. But it adds a few niceties, and in terms of the languages, in my opinion, a bit easier to learn. Not super much, but a bit easier to learn. It's more expressive, definitely, and in my opinion, it's also more like intuitive or whatever. So Java is not very intuitive, in my opinion. There's a few weird catches everywhere, and that you just have to know, or someone has to tell you, and you run into it at one point and are figured out the hard way. It got very popular since Google started to endorse it as the main, or it is nowadays the main language to do to Android applications. So if you coincidentally also want to do app development on Android, or actually with Kotlin also on iOS or other platforms nowadays, then this is the way to go anyways, because that's the language you would use. And that's, I think, also where the majority of the developers are that do Kotlin. But for example, personally, I don't even use it for application, mobile development, that is. I'm just using, doing general purpose application development on a normal computer or whatever you might have. And it gets more and more popular in recent times. And I think personally it's a very good also language to get started. I'll give a few more reasons why that is in a moment. Then you have Swift, which is similar in Kotlin in the way that it is the counterexample on the iOS side. So this is the language Apple designed to use when you want to do a native, truly native iOS, iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, whatever applications. It's also a very nice language. I don't have too much about to say because I didn't use it very heavily, but it does not see a lot of use outside of the Apple sphere, let's say, compared to Kotlin, which is certainly very popular nowadays as well for just general application development. And finally, JavaScript, which probably you heard before since it's running in your web browser. Very popular language for doing anything in a web browser. So the user interface you're using, also popular nowadays everywhere pretty much. You can also use it nicely for just application development or or pretty much anything else. People use JavaScript for everything. It has, in my opinion, even worse than Python. The problem that it doesn't lend itself, and I think there are not many people would disagree with me. It does not lend itself very well to doing larger scale, proper, in air quotes, applications, because it has a lot of weirdness to it. That just is for historic reasons. So if you want to do web applications, such as I don't know, like an interactive website or something like this, a web application, then you probably want to use JavaScript or TypeScript, which is based on that. Although we will also look into how other things such as Kotlin, that's why I like it so much, it also works nicely for that, can be used. But then probably, if that is really your main goal, you probably want to look into JavaScript at least at some point. However, I still think starting with something else such as Kotlin will make it very much easier on yourself to then look into JavaScript if you have like solid basis already. Which I think this way around is better to learn a solid basis, like what really means it to write a robust, good program, compared the other way around. If you start with JavaScript and then go to something else like Java, Kotlin, C++, etc., it'll certainly make you a harder time, because JavaScript is very lenient on making something robust. Yeah. As I mentioned, this list is not complete by any means. There's very many more options, but these are, in my opinion, probably the most popular ones that people also pick up nowadays, newly. Right? There's a lot of people that use other languages professionally or hobby purposes, since they learned them some years ago or decades ago even. But I think these are popular options to like pick up nowadays, newly. Right. In my opinion, personally, and this is ultimately, you guessed it, why I think Kotlin is so nice and why I chose it for this course, for all of these courses, at least for the general purpose ones, is that it's easy to learn. There's of course some things that are difficult about it, but to get just started, I think is good. Similar to Python, I would consider it's also very easy and good to get started. It is expressive in my opinion. There maybe Python is even a bit more expressive, but you can, what does that mean, even expressive? So it means that if you have your thought, okay, I want that my program does this, you can write it like nicely into the language in a way that is close to how you would think about it, which some languages are not very known for, mainly older ones. They need a very specific format to do all the operations, let's say. That doesn't lend itself very well to how a human brain would approach it. And I think that's certainly just a thing of newer languages in general, that they do better. Kotlin, very good example though. It's very powerful, just as most of the other ones on the list here, to be fair. But you can you can have also powerful, not only in the sense of it, you can do good large programs that do fancy things, let's say, but also in a sense that the tools that come with it, or like you'll see in another course where we look at basics of Kotlin programming. It comes, as every language comes, with some like shipped code that does something for you. So very common operations, let's say reading a file on your computer hard disk. Pretty much every language has some way or form of doing this very, very nicely and intuitively done in Kotlin, for example, compared to Java, where it's horribly confusing to get started. Once you figure it out, it's okay, but I think everyone will agree that that's, for example, is a good example. Reading a file is very, very non-intuitive, and thus also not so powerful for Java side. So it's intuitive in my opinion. This is a bit similar to the expressive point. It's quite concise, so you can, or it's not quite, it's very concise actually to many other languages. You can make short, to the point programs that doesn't require a lot of steps just for the sake of the language wanting you to do it that way. But it's maintainable. This is really about the points that I made about Python and JavaScript being, in my opinion, JavaScript more than Python. Python you can make maintainable. It's very easy to write applications that, it's also easy in any other language, but it's a bit easier, too easy in Python, JavaScript to write larger scale or even not so larger scale applications, programs that, yeah, you look again at it a month later, or some other people look at it, and it's not very, you cannot very easily extend it, fix any bugs, do stuff like that. That's what maintainability is about. Then nice thing is to have a large community. I would argue all of these in this list and many more have that. The nicety about that is that you will find many common tasks, such as reading a file, and many other things like common math functions and stuff, that you'll have what's called a library. So like someone else wrote the code already, and you can use it for free, usually, or in 99% of the cases. Such that you don't have to write this common task yourself, program that yourself, but leverage the fact that other people that know how to very nicely do reading a file, they figured it out, and you can just reuse their knowledge essentially. Yeah, this is the fact for all of these. They all have large communities, since yeah, they are good languages overall, or versatile, let's say. And finally, it is helpful if it's actively developed, which also all of these are. C++ gets updates a lot more infrequent than the others, but Java specifically is a good example, and Kotlin even more, that get very, very frequent updates, at least nowadays. So Java, it's every 6 months there's a new release, and in Kotlin it's even more often. That just adds like new features. All of a sudden you update it and you can just do a lot more stuff, and so on. And I think it is helpful. It can be, I quickly want to mention it can be a downside as well. It also has its merits to have a language that is like very like static for multiple years or decades, because you're not going to run into the problem that you wrote something 10 years ago and all of a sudden it doesn't really work anymore that well or at all with a newer version, because they changed the way of doing certain things, which has happened in the past with languages. Python is a good example. Where there was Python 2 for a long time, and then version 3 came around, and it was different enough that some things didn't work anymore, and people had to very tediously change their applications that they had running for a couple of years already to support the new version. So I want to mention this can also have a downside if a language moves too fast, or it's like not it changes too much. This is nowadays not a huge problem, because the developers also take good care that some stuff is backwards compatible, but it's something to keep in mind. Yes, in the meantime, I presume that our download finished. Let's check it. Yes, yep. So here's IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition. We're gonna start it in a second. Let's first quickly look at what Kotlin is roughly about. This is not going to explain you how to use it. It's more of an idea that you have what it is. But in the Kotlin basics programming course, we're going to look at how to use it. So it's a cross-platform, statically typed general-purpose programming language. That is very long. A general purpose, you already know what it means. Cross-platform just means that you can use it on a computer. You can use it in a sense of run an application you wrote with it. In your web browser, on your mobile phone. That's cross-platform, and the Kotlin developers are very active behind getting it on pretty much any platform you can imagine. It's statically typed. That doesn't tell you much maybe yet. I think I'll just skip over this fact, and we're going to look at it in the other course. Is more interesting to people that already know a bit languages and they just want to get an overview. Kotlin, and this is very important when you do develop it, mainly targets running on the Java virtual machine, or short, which you hear more often, JVM. I'm not going to go into too much detail what that is, just since I mentioned already that it is heavily based on Java. It uses also the underlying like architecture that the Java language originally envisioned in the 90s. If you run it at least on your computer, it also runs on the same underlying architecture. That's why we're not going into much detail how that looks like. In the end, you just write the program and run it. There's not much you have to think about in terms of Java. Also, importantly, you do not have to know Java to write Kotlin programs. But since it is so heavily based on it and it runs on the same underlying architecture, there's a few things that I'm not going to go over now, but in the Kotlin course, definitely going to go over, and that you should know about general like architectural things of how the JVM functions, because there's a few things that are just important to know to write good programs, right? So that's why I mention it. But as I mentioned already, you can also compile it into, convert it, you might say, into JavaScript or even native code, such that it doesn't, you can just double click it and it doesn't require any other extra programs, such as usually the JVM. So you have to have that installed to run a Kotlin program, but there's also ways to entirely take that out of the equation. Although this is still in its early stages, it's still being improved constantly, the native part. As I mentioned already, it is heavily based on a Java language, but what it also does, and that is one of its main niceties, arguably, is that it's fully interoperable with the Java language and its libraries. What does that mean? So this means that you can call any Kotlin code from Java, which is not so interesting because we're looking into writing Kotlin. But what is more interesting to us is that you can call and run any already at some point in time written Java source code. You can use from within your Kotlin source code. That's what interoperability means, and it's 100% interoperable. So it's not like some things work, some don't. Everything works. And that is some ultimate principle of the Kotlin language. Why is this interesting? This is interesting for us since Java is a huge language historically and still nowadays, and there's very, very many very nice and long existent libraries out there with code that does certain common tasks, and we can use all of them, which is very, very nice to use Kotlin, since there's a large pool of pre-existing things you can start using right away, which is a downside as many other newer languages have. From the slide earlier, there was no language that is really new. They're all, not old, but not new either, a few years old, or decades in some cases actually. But many newer languages that just are released, and there's constantly new languages being released, they have the problem at the beginning specifically that there's no community, and that's why I also mentioned having a large community is nice, such that if you want to do like a very common thing that you might have been used to from your other go-to language that you used every day, but then you want to use this new one, it's not there yet because no one wrote it. I mean, it makes sense. You cannot expect it to be there. Someone has to do the first step. And it also can be nice to be that person. But it's certainly, if you want to do like an application and very, very common things that you're being used to being there are not there, it can be a bit annoying. And that's, certainly not the case with Kotlin. You will find pretty much anything that you want, such that you don't have to write everything yourself. That's pretty cool. Yes. So now, let's look at setting up IntelliJ, as well as having a rough, very easy first start of running Kotlin. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the language itself, but at least I want you to be able to run very, very easy application program, such that for the course, you know at least where the buttons are that you have to press, and you're not already confused in the first lesson how to do this on your own computer that I'm showing you in the videos. All right, so let's flip over to, in my case, a toolbox. If you did download IntelliJ, then just go wherever you installed it and double click just as you would launch any other application. So I'm going to do this here, just a single click on this, and then it starts. We do have to read the terms and conditions. I already did this, of course, when I installed the Ultimate Edition, so I'm going to continue now. And this is the startup screen. And here we are. Okay. What you can do here, which might be quite interesting, is on the customize thing, you can change your color theme. So you have, you see it just changes the color. I personally like Darkula the most, which is this grayish one. But yeah, choose any other. You can also install later on, install whatever, like, or make your own very whatever color you want. This is, in my opinion, easy on the eyes because it's not very bright. But if you prefer your programs to be like, you know, light and that you write black on white like you would do in a text editor, then go for either of these. They are slightly different, not a lot. I'm gonna go for Darkula in this case. You can change the font size. I'm just gonna leave it in this case. And the key map. This is interesting because you probably want to use, and I can recommend it at least, to use shortcuts whenever you can, such as the obvious copy pasting that you probably do all the time, but a lot more interesting ones. And there's different pre-mapped ones. In my case, since I'm on macOS, I'm going to use the macOS one. But just as a in your case, this is probably whatever system you're on. I would leave it on the default, but if you already used another editor, you could select here. Let's say Eclipse is very popular, IDE as well. You could use the Eclipse key map so you don't have to relearn your key bindings. Plugins don't need to install any now. The only thing you should make sure is that if you go here on Marketplace and type in Kotlin, is that this says installed already, because otherwise we cannot start writing Kotlin. The other thing I'm quickly going to install is the presentation assistant, which all that it does, it shows you, if I do a shortcut, it shows you on the screen what the shortcut would be for your operating system. Also what the shortcut is itself, right? Because you don't see my keyboard. You don't need to install this. This is really just for this video. Don't install this. You can, of course, it's not hurting, but it also doesn't help you. Yes, what we're going to do now is just click on new project. And then we can start right here with, oops, this is a bit small. Start right here with selecting Kotlin at the site. You can see you can also do Ender development and a lot of other things. We're going to do Kotlin. So here you select your path where you want to have it. With this icon, you open your regular folder browser. In my case, I'm just going to leave it here. Let's call this TSTSE, which is the self-taught software engineer. Please pick any name that you want. This is really just an example application. Probably just call it example or something. But it doesn't matter at all. What you put here is just the name of the folder, actually, really. Yes, then we want to just select here application. And now you see where the multi-platform thing comes into play. So you have a few categories here. There's JVM, which is that it runs on the Java virtual machine, which is what you want if you run it on your computer. An important note here, which is very nice, is that the JVM, if I didn't mention it yet, is also for free. It's free of charge. There's no fees attached to it, at least to the version that comes pre-shipped with IntelliJ. So if you download and installed IntelliJ through the toolbox or directly, it contains already the Java virtual machine, such that you don't have to install anything extra. So from your point of view, you just run a program and it just magically runs, so to say, just so you know it does run in this JVM, which I'm going to explain later what that implies. So what we could do if we would want to, though, we also could use multi-platform, so that we could use, for example, mobile application here, or also Kotlin JS standing for JavaScript, running, developing a browser application. And even the last two options, which we're also going to look at in another course video, excuse me, to do applications on your computer that have a user interface. So for now, we're going to do stuff that just has textual output and input. But if you want to do something like this application, essentially, right, you have like nice buttons and stuff, or a web browser, or your Word or whatever. This is a nice way to do it with this JetBrains Compose for desktop framework toolkit. We're not going to do that today, so just select application, the first option in the JVM tab here. The next thing is the build system. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I personally can recommend using the first option, Gradle Kotlin. Yeah, I will explain it in another video. This is too much for now. It essentially just means that if you have your developed your application, something has to compile it, make it ready to be run on the JVM, and if you have multiple files, also like bundle them into one package, and then give it to the JVM that actually executes it for you. And there's different ways of doing this. This is the short version. And then finally, we have to select the version of the JVM that we want to use. So in my case here, this is 12. If you just installed this, because I already had these, you have to click download JDK, and it asks you which one you want. The version here, I would recommend you to select version 11, and then which is the latest stable one, let's say. And then here in the vendor, I would suggest you to use the first one, adopt OpenJDK, and the hotspot version. You can really use any of the others here, but this is the one I'm using, and that most people will also recommend to you. So you would then click here download, which I'm not going to do now, but if you would, then it just downloads. You can optionally change the path where it installs it. I would suggest not to change it, because some other, like if you run outside of IntelliJ, if you run your code, many things are dependent on this exact path where it is. So I would probably not change it, but you can. Within IntelliJ, it will not make any difference. Once you downloaded it, it will be in this list here. So just go ahead and select it. So I already did here earlier. So you see it is also adopt OpenJDK 11. So just what you would have downloaded like that. So we select this here, and then we go on next. Last thing I want to show quickly, because it's otherwise a bit weird. If you later want to change it, is the artifact coordinates. What this just means is that whatever you put in here is what all your files will have like as an internal name. It doesn't matter a lot what you put here. I would honestly just leave it on the defaults. But if you want to change the names of each file internally, then you could put here. The way that this works is that you have like multiple steps that represent like a domain, usually backwards. So what I use for all my programs, and I'm going to use that right now, is codes.jacob, which is Jacob codes, my URL, so it's swapped around. And then the actual thing that I'm developing, so in this case, it would be this. So this is usually what you'll see. The only reason why this is important is if you import your own as well as other written code, then you import it by this name. So let's say you use some other library that someone wrote, you would import, for example, com.github.something, whoever did it. But you can not even open this and leave it on the defaults. It will absolutely make no difference for you to get started. Yes, if your screen looks like this, apart from the name here, of course, and your path, then we're ready to go. Next, all of this, leave it as it is for now. It's not important right now. Let's leave it on the defaults. Whatever those may be, they may differ in your case, but yeah, we can leave that, and then finish, and then you will have your IntelliJ open. What will happen is by default it shows the tip of the day. You can say do not show tips, so then when it starts it doesn't show them anymore. They are very nice though, so I probably, to get started, I would just leave it and maybe read another time or now and pause the video, read some of them. Probably many of these will not tell you a lot. So for now we're going to close, but it is a very nice offering of the application. Yes, so what happens now is we're gonna just quickly get going, and in the other Kotlin course you're gonna see a few more examples about how exactly to use more precise features, such as Gradle, which you saw earlier we could select in a build system. Here we just say got it, so this goes away, we don't need that for now. Yes, what does this application generally look like? And I'm going to show you a few like key features, and then we're going to write a very short, quick application program and run it. So first thing is you'll see here at the bottom that there's this progress bar where it shows you what it's doing at the moment. So for you as well, it'll do something in the background. In this case, it's currently downloading some extra stuff we'll need. Just let it do its thing. And anything that has an I here for information, we can anyways click away. So we don't need that for now. Just as you know, this will flicker around a bit and do something. It's not too important for now what it does. In the middle here, we have our main editor window that you'll be using to open your files. At the left side here is the file browser that if you double click anything, for example, let's do the Gradle properties here, it opens in the middle. You can open multiple things at a time, and they like stack behind each other, and it's just like tabs in your browser. With the X, you close it. The other option you have is Command W on macOS, and now I'm wondering why it doesn't show you the shortcuts. That would be very helpful. A quick intermezzo here for me to see why that is not. That's a bit sad. Let me fix that quickly. All right, it turned out it was working all along, just not with Command W. So again, either Control holding that and WS, it is also in your web browser, that's where they got the shortcut from, or Command on a Mac, W will close anything you have open. Otherwise, of course, use the X. It's just a bit easier in my opinion. For some reason, it doesn't show this shortcut. Right. What we're going to do now is ignore, and now you see what I meant, this in the bottom here, in the green thing, you'll see in all of the courses, such that you know what I'm doing on the keyboard because you're not seeing it. So yeah, if you're here somewhere and you do up and down arrows, as you can see, you can go, well, up and down. We're going to ignore everything that is here in the folder itself. Also, all of the other folders that are created for us, they're all necessary for different purposes. We're going to ignore them for now. The only thing that we're going to look at is the src folder, which you can either double click to open or use this arrow button here. Or also you can use your right arrow key and the left one to like open and close it. So essentially mimic the direction of the arrow here. So what we can do is just a file browser, as you know from your operating system. src standing for source, so this is where our source code goes. This is just a general abbreviation you'll find use for this folder. Then what we have in here is a main and a test folder. What this just is in main goes your program code, and in test goes code that tests the correctness of your program code. For now, we're not going to write any tests because we just want to get started. There will be other courses about that, but for the time being, also ignore this. It can just be empty. Or well, it is not empty in this case, but you can just ignore it essentially. It's not going to cause any troubles. So what we're only going to need for now is main. What you'll find in here is the Kotlin folder as well as resources. First resources, because we're not going to need it now either. This is meant for if you have any other files that you need, auxiliary files, if you want, if you wish, excuse me, that you need for running your program. A very common example of this would be if you have some icons, let's say, that you want to display in your user interface, like for instance, these small arrows here. They would typically, for example, go into the resources folder. So everything that is that is not source code, but also required in some way or form to run the program, other files, images, maybe music, if you do a game or something, you would put in here. That means for now we can also ignore it. And finally, the Kotlin folder, which is where all of our source code goes into. What we're going to do now is do either a right click on it, or actually, let's just do that for now, yes. A right click on it and select new here, and then Kotlin class/file. You see it also offers other things that you can open or you can create a new file of. We of course want a Kotlin file. Now you just type a name. I'm going to use example. This does not matter at all what you put here. Yeah, as it's just an example. And then in the list here with the arrow keys, we can go up and down and select what type of file of Kotlin file we want to create. I'm not going to go into detail what all of these are. For now, we're just going to do file because we just want a plain file with nothing in it. Yes, and this is already all we need to get started. Before we write any code, I'm quickly going to show you like the most important other options. The first one being that you can in the bottom left here, there's this structure panel, or you can also see it's Command 7, I presume, maybe Alt 7 on Windows. I mean, we can try actually. Yes, so you see here is for Windows and Linux. What this does is that for the file you currently have open, it shows you the structure of the file. This is a bit useless at the moment because there's nothing in it, but you'll see that once we start writing something, there's stuff here, which is very nice to navigate throughout it. So you don't have to keep this open, but if you want to, it is very, very helpful. The next thing that is very helpful is that if you have a file somewhere, but you like open, but you don't know where it is in your file tree here, then what you do is you can click on this, what looks like a crosshair, or the other option, as you can see here, is let's quickly try it. That was not it. Yes, to click on the crosshair and it takes you where the file is. This can be very helpful if you lost, so if you have very many at some point and you lost like where the hell is this even, because you want to move it maybe or see what else is in the same folder, then just click this crosshair and it takes you there. The next thing that is interesting to know is you can change the layout of everything in here. I think the default is pretty good, but if you would want to, what you can do, you see there's all these tabs here, right? There's structure, which I opened just now with this. What you can also do is just click on them, and they open and close. But what you can also do is you can drag and drop them around. So personally, for example, I don't like my structure here. This is the default, but this is one of the only things that I personally like somewhere else. And what you can do is you can just drag this whole thing, and you already see you can like dock it somewhere else. So we could, for example, put it here, and then it's here at the bottom. Where I personally like to have it is here at the top, such that it's here like at the side. So I have like one left side thing, one right side thing. Here my project structure, my files, and here my structure of the current open file. Then that's how I like it. But if you like it, I don't know, at the bottom here, like this, for instance, why not? That's also good. What you can also do is right click on it and do all sorts of other modes. This I would suggest just look around a bit how you like this. What you can just do is instead of dragging and dropping, you can tell it go to the top right, for instance. Or what can also be quite nice is you can make it an extra window. So this I personally do not use a lot, but if you, for example, have two screens, this can be quite nice to make like a new window just for this and put it on your other screen. In my case, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this, so I'm gonna tell it to go back to doc pinned, which is the default. Yes. All the other ones that you see here, to do problems and etc., we do not really need for now. I'm gonna go over them in another course. I personally think that project and structure are the only two ones you really need, and to run your code, which I'll show in a second as well. Yes. So just quickly here, because I found it a bit confusing when I first started using it. If you open any other file, it automatically changes the structure automatically changes to what you have open. So you see here, if I switch around, this updates itself. So you can just keep it open or closed if you really don't like it or it's in a way or something. I usually have it open all the time, but it's really not required. You can just work without it. Yes, I think that's it for the basics of the tool. There's a few nice shortcuts that you can use that I'm still going to show you, and then but all of these are related to the code. So let's get going. What we're quickly going to do, I'm not going to explain a lot what I'm doing, since that's what the other Kotlin course is for, but so just bear with me if you're interested, and I presume you are, in how to write code, then go watch that. Or if you're really starting from scratch, then watch my programming basics, where I also use Kotlin to explain the stuff. So I'm just gonna write some things here for now, and I'm gonna show you a few common things you can do. Just follow along with me. Follow along. You don't have to do this on your machine, but I'll just do a few quick short things to show you some niceties of IntelliJ. This is not really about Kotlin necessarily. Let me quickly think. This is on the fly. I didn't prepare this. So I'm just doing it live. Or let's call this. All right, and oops, all right. So what I quickly just did is create a main function. This is only important because you need some entry point to your program. As you can see here, it also has this play button now, which we're gonna, as you might have guessed, in a moment to start the program. How you can easily get this, because it might be a bit weird to write if you're getting started. If you start writing, this is one of the first features also, that's why I did it of IntelliJ. If you start writing something, it'll give you like a drop down with nice options. So if you start writing just M actually, it'll tell you, do you want main, which is main function. There's also main A, which you can give further arguments for further options. We just need the default one. So with arrow keys up and down, you can navigate. There oftentimes is way more options than this. So we could now, if you are on some option, you do enter, and then it does whatever you selected here. In my case, we already had it, so I will just select it and get rid of it. This is a regular text editor in itself, so you can just write normal text here, but of course it'll, you see, it'll be like underlined red if it doesn't understand what you're doing. So it's not meant, of course, here to write text, it's meant to write Kotlin code. So it'll squiggly line everything with red here, and also the file itself, actually the whole folder will be squiggly lined with red because it detected some issue here. So if we remove this, you will, the file has no line anymore, and this is a valid, this tells you that the file itself is a valid Kotlin file, and at least it can of course contain some errors and it doesn't do what you want, but at least it'll be able to run it, execute it. The other thing you have, if you do a mistake, something that is not existent, here you have the same thing. It also tells you here at the top side, if you hover over these icons, it says I have 1 error and 3 warnings. Another thing that is quite nice, if you click on this, and that's, I realized one of the other tabs here that is actually useful is problems, which you can open like this and close, or clicking. It tells you some problems with your file, especially which is when you start out, pretty useful. So in this case, it tells us unresolved reference hello, and it tells you the line number. So in line 5, it doesn't know what this is, what to do with that. So let's get rid of it again, and you see it automatically updates. And the other things it tells us, which also are nice, but as you see, that are just warnings, not errors. Variable number A is never used, B as well as the function we used here, we created here. So let's fix all of that, and then you'll see it also changes a bit the colors and stuff. So if we then do the following. Oops, of course we need yeah, you can, if you double click something, anything, it marks the whole word, which is very helpful. So in this case, I want here, I put A and B accidentally, but of course I want to give number A and number B. So I just double click anywhere in the word. You can do it at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, and it selects the whole thing. And then just as any other program, you can use Command C, Control C to copy it. So we take blah, number A and number B and put them in here. And now you see there's no warnings anymore. Also not up here. It actually gives you also a small check mark saying no problems found. That's ultimately what you want. If there's a warning, it's not necessarily a problem because it'll be still able to run, but it tells you that there's something less, like you saw right now. You declared something that you actually didn't make any use of. So a few more words about what you'll see, and then we're gonna quickly execute this actually, and then I think that's all you need to know to get started. So we have our starting point here, which is just like an empty block of what you can write in. We declared two values, which are just numbers 10 and number 20. And finally, I made another function. You also can see here, it both starts with the same keyword that just, as you can see, does a plus b. Very easy, and it's of course called sum because that's what it's doing. And then finally, what we do here is we invoke or call, you would also say, with numbers a and b, this method, sorry, this function. What all of this means you'll see in the course, but just so you have a rough understanding. And finally, the result of this, whatever we get, we pass into yet another function, which is called println, ln standing for line. So what it will do, it will on our screen will print out, so display, you might say is a bit more accurate term, the result of this operation, summing 10 and 20. So you would at the end expect that it will just print number 30. Yes. Before we do that, one quick last word about the colors here. So you see what it does. It's called syntax highlighting. So it'll give you an indication what the parts of your program are here. So you can change all of this. I like the defaults a lot actually, but if you want to, in the settings, if you search for syntax highlighting, you can change all the colors here if you want to. So you see a few common things are marked. So you, for example, see the keywords are always in orange, the names of functions are yellow, the values of something are always just light blue, and pretty much anything else is white. Why is this nice? If it helps us first of all see a bit like the parts of the program. If you write a bit more, you start to appreciate it. But also what's useful is if you make a mistake of sorts, you can easily see it directly. So let's see here, let's say here I would, instead of number A, give it number C. Apart from this already immediately starting to cry, you can see here that number C is a very bright red color, which usually tells you there's something wrong with it. So this is also a very quick, easy indication to see if you have your file open that is longer than just 9 lines, but like, I don't know, 100 or something, or 1,000 maybe even, or even longer. And then this is a nice, easy way. If you scroll through it and you see, oh, there's something red here, then what's wrong with it? Yes, what we'll do now is quickly run it, and then I'll show you a few more last helpful things about the IntelliJ program, and then we're done right here. So what we do now is we click on this play button, and then we are presented with a few options. We just need the first one, so you just want to run. I'm gonna, in another course, or about in the Kotlin course actually, I'm gonna show you the second option, but for now we just want to run it. So what happens then is it takes a few seconds, and you will get this indication here at the bottom that it's doing something with the loading bar. Depending on your computer, this takes a bit longer or shorter. Since this program is very small, this will not take very long, even if your computer is not as fast. So you don't need a super fast machine or anything when playing games or something after all. But this does take a moment, specifically if you do it the first time. So after you change something and rerun it, it will be a lot quicker. So this takes a few seconds. In my case, it is a bit on the slow side today. So yeah, let's see. Yes, while this is doing its thing, I can of course show you some other stuff already. What is very helpful is, and that's the thing you're going to use the most, so listen carefully. If you hold on a Mac command or on Windows and Linux the control key and you hover over something, you see like first of all you see like a short description of it, which later if you programmed a bit more is helpful. But what you also see, it like is blue and underlined, and what that means is if you now click, just left click mouse button, it takes you to where this is declared. So you see also here it says navigate. I will do it again quickly. Navigate, go to declaration or usage. And what you can also do, as it tells here, is you can use if you're already on the word, and here again, it doesn't matter where you are, it can be in the middle of the word, just somewhere, and you do the shortcut here, Command or Control B, it takes you there. I personally prefer like holding the Command key and clicking on it, also called Command clicking or Control clicking. But if you prefer just putting your cursor there, or also using the arrow keys, of course, to navigate there, and then do this, exact same effect. This works with anything. You can jump to where the number A is declared, for instance. Then it takes your cursor to the beginning. But what this is mainly useful for is to navigate around your code. So if you're like, I mean, in this case, it's very obvious what sum does, but if it's a more complicated thing, then this is very helpful to, and also what can happen, of course, that you have a bunch of other code here in the middle. Then you don't see it even anymore. Let's imagine there would be more source code here. You can do this, and it takes you where you want to go, and then you can read, okay, this is what sum is doing. In this case, not so helpful, but you get the idea. Yes. The other thing that I personally find very helpful is if you did that, and you are down here, and you know read it, and you saw, okay, this is what it's doing. Of course, you can do what I just did and scroll up. I usually do not do this though. What you can instead do is this shortcut. I'm going to do it a couple more times, and you can see it's navigating back. The same is if you use the other way around. So on macOS, it's the 2 bracket keys together with Command, and on Windows and Linux, it's Control Alt and the arrow key left and right. You can navigate forward and backwards. It's like a browser in your browser, the forward backward button to go back on a page and stuff. This is very helpful because usually you would click here and you are down here, and then you typically want to go back where you got this method, you use this function, sorry. I'm just doing this way quicker than like scrolling around and finding the place specifically once you have more code, and it's just not that easy to even find the exact line again. In the meantime, this finally finished building. I'm sorry, I don't know why this took so long. And here we can see it already ran, and it's currently exiting. So we're done. So what you see here is that it automatically opens this run window. Just as everything else, you can collapse it again, drag it around to another place, whatever you wish to do. And it just outputs everything that that you told it to. So in essence, everything that was given into this println function. And then at the end, you just see here process finished with exit code 0. There's other exit codes if there was errors. 0 just means it exited what's called gracefully. So it just exited because there was nothing more to do. So in this case, we just say we have number 10 and 20, and we sum them together and print or display the output in this window here. So there is, you can see there's nothing more to do here. So it just exits with exit code 0, which is just the default, like I'm done, there's nothing to do. Yes, what you can do now here is you can rerun it with this button. So if you change something here, let's say we change this to also be a 20, we can just click on this button and it'll rerun. The alternative thing that you can do, as you saw, is a shortcut. Or you can also just click here again on the button and select run. It'll have the same effect. And you see 20 plus 20, 40. If you're done here, either you can just click here and it minimizes it, or if you also want to get it out of here entirely because it annoys you, there's not really a reason, but if you want to, there's also a small X here and you can just close this outright. Yes, I think that is pretty much it. To get you started. Of course, you see at the top here, there's a lot of options as you would have in any program where there's a lot of stuff hidden behind. We're not going to look at that now, but later in other more precise courses, because that's fine for now to get started. So in my opinion, the most important shortcuts to remember are to jump forward and backward with the command clicking here and then doing this. As well as, of course, using the arrow keys is also helpful, of course. Anything else works exactly like your regular text editor that you used would work. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The last thing I want to quickly mention, because it is very nice since I can, of course, only explain so much, if you are interested in learning more about the program IntelliJ itself, I'm gonna do another course. But what you can also do either while waiting for that or just in general, it's interesting. There's this small Learn tab here at the side that you can click on. If you do not have it, you can also go here on Help or the equivalent menu on other operating system and type here Learn or something like that. And it will say Tool Windows. So it's also under View Tool Windows Learn. Or you click here. And what it does, what this is as you can see, Learn IDE features for Java. This says for Java, we're doing Kotlin, but most of these things work very similar, if not exactly the same for Kotlin. So if you want to, look around a bit what else the program can do, which is a lot of things, this is quite nice. So you can here go around and read how things work. Yes, one final thing actually I just realized that I forgot, which is pretty useful, is that with Command F, just as in any other program, you can search stuff. So it is literally a search, and then pressing enter brings you to where the words are used. You can close that if you don't need it anymore. And the other nice option is, and that is very helpful, and I actually don't know why I forgot it, if you double tap your shift key it brings up this menu, which is called Search Everywhere. And it is literally what the name implies. You can search anything. So people use this for finding. So for example, if I type sum, it shows you, oh, you have this sum function, and you can go here and it takes you there. Which you can imagine if you have like 100 files here at some point, because you have a large application that does a lot of things. Good luck finding the sum function somewhere. Instead, what people do is search it here. But as you can see, this also shows you functionalities of the IDE itself. So what you can also use it for instance, if you let's say what I just did with the thing here, if I type learn, it'll show you things that in the IDE itself that have learn. Or for example, here tip of the day, you can turn it on and off, what you saw at the beginning. So in this case, if I navigate here and say learn IDE features, I'm back here. So double shift, like a double tap, like what you do on a mouse button, brings you to this very helpful to find stuff later. Yeah, that's it for this here. Let's go back to the slides. All right, we're done with the setup. So that's it for today's video. As always, some final words. As I mentioned, I personally will do the courses with the Kotlin programming language, and this is also the examples you saw just now. But I can recommend you, if you are interested in it, it's not required, to also take a look at other languages if you feel like it. You don't need to just get started. If your goal is I want to learn how to program, I want to learn how to write software applications, whatever it may be, then the courses that I'm offering are perfectly fine, and I would personally then just stick to Kotlin, since that's what the courses are going to be offered in. But if you are just either curious or have a specific use case, you want to, I don't know, if you're interested specifically in scientific programming or something, then of course look into other languages that is very geared towards. And in general, of course, that's a nice thing to do. However, it's not required for following any of the courses, and Kotlin is very good to get started. And I'm convinced also that it's a good first language to get started, for all the reasons I gave on the slide earlier. The final thing I want to end with, you can entirely ignore this. It's just really a interesting hint, is that there's plugins in IntelliJ that you can install that do various things. So the 4 here that I selected that I find quite helpful, I quickly want to mention. The first one is Key Promoter X, which does show you shortcuts. So what it does is, if you use your mouse to click on something, it instead also tells you with a small pop-up at the side, hey, by the way, what you just did is also hidden behind the shortcut, I don't know, Option Command L or something like that. This can be annoying at times because it really tells you this for almost anything, or well, everything that has a shortcut enabled. But if you want to learn them, then I would recommend installing this. If you are just getting started, it's a bit much, so then probably I would not recommend it. But if you want to be like quick with the shortcuts, then this is the way to go. Then there's Grazie, not quite sure how to pronounce it. Not no Italian. This is just a type checker. Type checker in the sense of human natural language. So if you write, of course you saw we wrote number A, number B. If I put a typo in there, it'll also squiggle it, not red, but like with a gray color, to tell you, hey, you misspelled the word number. Of course, happens all the time, which can be quite nice because later on, if I'm thinking about, there was this function that to sum two things together, but I wrote it with, I don't know, SAM, or I don't know why, maybe I just hit the wrong key, and I do the double shift and type SUM, and it's like there's nothing called SUM sum, because you mistyped it, you put a typo. Then this is nice because you can detect it already at the beginning and just fix it. Sonar lint, which is a bit also too much at the beginning. It tries to automatically detect common errors you would put in your code. I don't have a good example for this right now, but there's a very many common pitfalls that this thing can detect while you type. So you type and it just also puts a yellow underline actually and says, hey, by the way, this is gonna not work how you likely intended to work. Also, I would recommend to install this a bit later when you already know, can program a bit, because otherwise it's a bit confusing, a bit too much. And finally, rainbow brackets. All that does is the most useless, you could argue, out of these four. All that it does is that whenever you use brackets to like enclose something, so as you saw with the main function here, these guys, it colors them in different colors. The whole point being that if you use more behind each other, you see what they belong to. You see that IntelliJ also does this for you. So if you click like next to a brace, it'll show highlighted what the other one is that this belongs to. And what all that rainbow brackets does, it also makes them in, well, rainbow colors, so you can see a bit easier what they belongs to instead of just yellow. So it's very I personally like it for more overview, but it's very, very, very optional. You don't really need it, but it's a nice plugin. Since of course here, this is something I should also probably mention, with these small buttons here, you can like collapse parts of your code. So they're just hidden, right? It's still there. Also, you can see line number 1 and then 7. So there's lines missing. And with the plus and minus buttons, you can collapse this, or you can also click on this here and it shows you that again. And that's what this highlighting is for. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I should, of course, quickly show you how to install this. Otherwise, the whole plugin mechanism is a bit useless. So what you do is you open the settings, which you can find under File. I'm sorry, where are the settings? No, sorry, it's under IntelliJ Preferences. This will be a bit different, of course, on other operating systems, but otherwise search here for Preferences. Or I also think this icon brings you there. Yes. So if you click this gear icon here at the top right and then go to the wrench here, you're also taken there. Or this is apparently the shortcut. And then we just go here on plugins, and then we have our installed plugins as well as marketplace, which is where you can download new ones. 90% I would say of them are free. Actually, it's quite recommended to just go through them here and read the text, what it does. It's also a bit much if you're getting started, but once you have some knowledge, it's quite nice to see what's available. And there are some paid ones, but you're not going to pay through this, so you cannot actually click somewhere like an app store and then you paid money to someone. It's all of them have trials and you have to pay them through whoever offers them. So don't worry, nothing here will cost you anything. So if you go to marketplace, and then in this thing you can search. So for example, we can get rainbow brackets. There we go, and then just click install. Oops. Install. That takes a few seconds. For some, you have to restart the IDE in this case. For others, you don't. I'm not going to do that now, but you can click here and it just restarts the program and it's automatically enabled. If you want to disable them, you just go to installed, and then there's these checkboxes. So if you say, I don't want this anymore, then you can disable it, like with this one, or outright uninstall it, of course. Yes. and also ask me. No, I don't want to restart it now. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. Yeah, if you have any questions about IntelliJ specifically, post them in the comments, please. If the comments are more specifically about Kotlin, then I would ask you to wait for the course that I'm currently also producing to get you started in actually writing programs in Kotlin, because I'm going to answer hopefully all your questions there. But if it's IntelliJ specific things, then post them. Although I also plan on doing a video with more, essentially what I did today, but more, more in depth about the IntelliJ program. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. As always, if you have feedback, then leave it under this video. I am very happy about reading that and applying it, of course. And otherwise, see you in the next one. Bye-bye.